This is a Forwardly podcast.
Hi, I'm Deke Antrim, and this is my podcast, Sidetrack'D. It will come as no surprise to our listeners that 1982's Blade Runner is my favorite film of all time, which is why this episode is obviously so special to me. Originally, I thought it would be challenging to explain why this movie means so much to me. I'm sure for a lot of people, the reason they love something isn't just black and white, and for me, Blade Runner was never just the image up on the screen. So stay tuned as I switch chairs for once and play the role of guest during an in-depth chat with what Blade Runner means to me, followed by our exclusive interview with the film star Sean Young. She has some of the most amazing behind-the-scenes stories. As always, we speak our minds here on Sidetrack'D, and there are major spoilers ahead. You have been warned. Now, let's kick this special edition of Sidetrack'D off properly with another exclusive interview with Sebastian himself, William Sanderson. I'm honored to be joined by the actor who carried a large portion of the emotional heartbeat in my favorite film of all time, Blade Runner. William Sanderson, how you doing today, sir?
I'm fine. Thank you for wording it that way.
There's so many characters in the movie that you don't know if you can trust or not, and you are, without a doubt, within seconds, able to disarm the audience and let them know that this is an innocent character, and so whatever happens, good or bad, to Sebastian, you should have some kind of emotional connection with this character. I think that speaks a lot to your acting, and again, that happens within seconds, your character meeting Chris.
Well, thank you. One of the pieces of direction that Ridley Scott gave me was that this is a totally innocent man. Mm-hmm. Whether people agree with that or not, I trust the director. Yeah. I go on and I put out things that normally bother me and just try to portray that.
And now you mentioned Ridley. What was your working relationship like with him?
He's a tough taskmaster. Ask his crew. He was used to working with English crew who react differently, maybe faster. But I thought it was good. I had a better part when I read the screenplay, and I die on the screen. And you have to be careful. Don't protest too much. Don't. When it comes your moment, try to be as good as you can be, or as honest, as real. Rutger went to the director and convinced him not to shoot that scene because it would make him less sympathetic.
Oh, wow.
He thought he'd done enough killing. So don't get me wrong, Rutger's a great actor, or was a great actor, and his large reason the movie has become a cult classic. It could have been better.
What I saw up on screen, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think it's pitch perfect, to be honest with you.
Well, I appreciate that.
You mentioned Rutger Hauer. How were you able to play off of his performance of Roy Batty?
He's very, very intense, and you just listen to him, and Ridley Scott will tell people, William Sanderson, no, that's him. That's him on the screen.
Right.
I have the emotions of a 9-year-old, slightly backward 9-year-old. I walk like balls on my feet and wrinkled skin. But I sure could relate to him, the character, and I kind of loved him. They were all good actors in that, and I am grateful that I survived it. Got a nice message from Harrison Ford and the producer, Michael Dealey. I once said to him, 6 months from now, I'll still be wondering how I could have done it better. He said, 6 months? 6 years. So it's nearly 40 years now. But he was a great producer.
The scene I wanted to talk about next is where Sebastian and Pris and Roy are all together in your house. That's really, for me, the star of the movie as far as your performance. How you were able to react to them being one moment charming and then the next moment violent. They would be disarming and gruff and then humorous and then scary. It was all over the place.
Well, you're very kind. There is a certain naivete in my life. I know a friend of mine said I got his role in Blade Runner, but he's a wonderful actor, Joe Pantoliano. But
okay.
I have to be careful. You give me these compliments, and my head gets bigger. But thank you. The scene. I wish we could have seen more of the soundstage because that entire soundstage was Sebastian's apartment. I walked there 30 years later to do a sitcom, and we used about a fifth corner of it. I said, "Oh, this used to be my apartment." And look, I don't want to sound like I'm disenchanted with it. I'm grateful to be in a cult film.
You mentioned the sets. That's one of the most eye-catching pieces of the movie for me. You work in the Bradbury building. Your apartment
Right.
is an amazing set piece, and Tyrell's place is an amazing set piece. I mean, you really got to work in these fantastic sets. How did that help you find the character?
I'll confess, I'm usually more worried about will I remember what I'm supposed to say? Will I hit the right points?
Mhm.
More people ask me, could they visit the set? They eventually closed it, but they would ask, how you getting these films? I was younger, and like all the other struggling actors, just lucky to get a job. Harrison Ford was I believe, the hottest actor in the world. He had a Spielberg movie coming out,
Yeah,
and I
Raiders.
think so that was a thrill. And of course, they were praising us and telling us this is going to happen and that's going to happen. But I never buy into anything as a guarantee. Imitation is the greatest flattery or something. I saw commercials come out, films affected by it. They taught it in architecture classes, courses about it. But, it was called, as I'm sure you know, one reviewer called it a fascinating failure.
Yeah.
So it was a little sad, and but eventually it really, people saw Ridley Scott as somewhat prophetic,
Mhm.
certainly a visionary. Takes time sometimes.
Yeah, it does. But it seems like everyone's kind of come around to it, so.
Well, residuals still come in.
So that's a good thing. So I was going to ask you about the aging makeup. How much time did you spend in the chair getting that prepared for before set?
Well, it's nice to get that attention, but it really got a little difficult as it approached July. That's latex makeup. It
Mm.
took 2 hours each day, and you'd sweat. But we had a wonderful man named Pete Altabelli. I don't know if he ever got his due. Pete did all the work,
Mhm.
and nice man.
Mhm.
My character was supposed to be in his early 20s, but looked in his
Yeah,
40s.
25, I
So
believe, right?
I still don't know how the public perceived it. But they shaved my eyebrows, and I didn't love that, but I didn't question anything.
Gotcha. The pecking order again, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've had my days where I did, and if I had it to do over, I'd usually just do what the director
Yeah.
says. But sometimes you can't help it.
You just mentioned Daryl Hannah. You were out on set for her injury when her arm went through the window of
Yeah,
the
but
car.
they didn't tell me, and I didn't know got hurt.
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't know it.
You guys just kept going with the scene. Looking back on that, what is that like to know that she actually injured herself and still has a scar to this day from that injury?
Well, I think she's a classy young lady, and she gave me a couple of drawings of our character, Lucky Neil Young. I guess she's with him now, but she was a sweetheart, like 19 years old.
Right. When was the first time that you actually saw Blade Runner? Was it with an audience? Was it at the premiere?
Sometimes I'm lucky to get the premiere, but I believe it was the first screening. Harrison was there with
Mhm.
his entourage, and that made me happy.
What was your first reaction to seeing Blade Runner put together for the first time?
There should have been more screen time for William Sanderson.
Yeah.
My opinion matters about as much as a bent coin coming out of a soda machine. Didn't know how lucky I was to be in that film and have it generate jobs and cartoons, and my son named his business after the Blade Runner, and so it's nice thing to happen.
I mean, it's been alive for, like you said, almost 40 years. It's got a legend to itself, and you're a huge part of that. So I just want to say thank you for being part of my favorite piece of art of all time.
Oh, thank you for taking time.
No,
And
thank you.
Sean Young, you talked to her, right?
I did, yeah.
She was great in it, and some kind of beauty. She's still working a lot, and
Mhm.
I'm glad to hear that.
Did you want to promote anything?
Oh, well, I'm kind of proud of my book. It may be the stupidest thing I've ever done, telling on myself. It's called Yes, I'm That Guy, The Rough and Tumble Life of a Character Actor.
Hmm.
It has my successes and disappointments, but often being a danger to myself. drinking, arrest, self-sabotage, self-doubt, on and on and on, but still landing all kinds of jobs, from movies, TV, commercials, voiceovers, cartoons, etc.
Right.
So read the reviews. Read the reviews on Amazon, and they're pretty much all close to 5 stars. I'm grateful.
I'm excited. I can't wait. I'm actually going to pick up a copy today. Okay.
Thank you, Deke.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
More human than human is our motto.
What if I go north? Disappear. Would you come after me?
No, you wouldn't, but somebody would.
It's too bad she won't live.
I can see you.
Time to die.
Will you help us?
What seems to be the problem?
Death.
I want more life.
An experiment. Nothing more. Nothing more. More human than human is our motto.
Hi, my name is Gigi Lage, and today I am actually going to be interviewing Deke Antrim on his relationship to Blade Runner.
I got to be honest with you right off the bat. It's interesting to watch how this is done and why now you snicker at me every time I have to do it. So it's funny to be on the opposite side of this.
It's interesting to be on the other side of this for me.
I feel naked. I feel raw.
Good. I'm glad.
I feel al dente.
Awesome.
I have no notes. I'm blind.
You're not looking at a computer. You're not hiding behind a screen.
No.
I love it. Not giving anyone a little glimpse of what you're thinking about.
So you'd like to address the fact that I never tell you what we're going to discuss on podcasts beforehand.
Correct.
I'm not big on discussing what the topics or the subjects or the things that I want to discuss with my guests. And since you occasionally are my guest, you don't care for that, do you?
I do not. And that is why today we are turning it around on you.
Which is
so
fine.
I'm happy that you feel naked.
And as the guest, I'm comfortable not knowing ahead of time. And I feel all guests feel that same way.
Yeah, well, we don't. And I am probably speaking for most of us. Let's be honest here.
I disagree.
All right. So today we screened Blade Runner.
We did, yeah. We just finished up a couple seconds ago.
Can you tell us what version we just screened?
So we just screened the 4K Blu-ray of the final cut. I think there's been 7 cuts in total of the history of Blade Runner.
Have you seen them all?
No. No, I haven't.
How come?
Okay, so I am a firm believer that films and cinema and movies are all a director's medium. And so by that rationale, anytime I hear the version director approved or director's cut or a final cut approved by the director, whatever the packaging is, as long as it's signed off on by said director of said movie, that's the version I want to watch. It wasn't until later on when the director's cut came out that I think for me and a lot of other people took a huge notice of this movie and what a huge difference that a couple of seconds and a couple of trims and edits here can make on the final vision of something.
All right.
Yeah.
So the theatrical cut came out in 1982, is that correct?
Yes.
And what about the director's cut? How long
I want to say
after?
10 years possibly.
10 years after.
You know, we're recording this in 2021 and director's cuts are very commonplace. But back then, for a director to be able to come back a decade later and have a different version than something that was put in the theaters that studio Warner Brothers already signed off on, that was enormous. That was huge. Just growing up at a younger age and being around when the beginnings, the dawn of director's cuts, the main big difference was he was able to add in 10 seconds of a unicorn scene, which implied that Deckard was a replicant, and that changes pretty much the entire landscape of the film. And if nothing else, and if it doesn't for you, you at least have that question in your head, because everyone can go in with different mindsets and definitely leave with different experiences than the person sitting next to him, which is one of the things that I find so rad about the movie.
Right.
So you can believe that he's a replicant, or you can not, and you can watch it today. I want to see what this movie's telling me with some of their subtle hints if he's not a replicant and what it says about mankind. But then you can watch it the very next day and say, well, this time I'm going to watch it thinking he is a replicant, and I want to see what that says about mankind also.
So today we viewed this movie with subtitles.
Yeah, we did.
And that was the first time you said that you saw
I
this with
have
subtitles?
never, in the years that I've been watching this movie, never watched it with subtitles.
Okay. Well, this is the second time I have seen Blade Runner.
Yeah, ever.
The first time we watched it together, and we did it during a screening.
Yeah. What the Hello Kitty was that?
I think I dropped something.
Okay, gotcha.
Where was I? Fucking phone.
Oh, was that your phone you just dropped?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that seems important. Do you want to?
No, it's okay.
Reach down and get that?
No.
Check and see if it's broken. See if your screen protector worked.
No, it's fine. I did not take everything in as I should have probably. And watching this first time, we started without subtitles.
Oh,
and
the second time, yes.
Sorry,
Okay.
the second time.
Yeah. It's okay. I'll keep track of how many times you've seen this movie, which is only twice. I understand how easily we could have lost track of how many times you've seen this classic movie.
So my point is, watching this movie the second time with subtitles, it was a lot easier for me to grasp what is being said in the background. Roy Batty's
exquisite dialogue.
Exquisite, yeah, for lack of a better word.
Like there is a better word to describe his dialogue, but that's something we can discuss.
Just watching this with subtitles was a little bit easier for me to understand.
Copy that.
I was just wondering, how was it for you, this viewing?
I try to avoid subtitles often. And so when you asked to watch this version, I was totally fine with it. Maybe about 5%. I was getting something a little bit kind of newish or looking a little bit more into some things. For me, one of the callback for this movie is the visual porno that this is to me. And so I have a little trouble sometimes concentrate on how beautiful the moving pictures are on a movie if I feel like subtitles are forcing me to look down and read them. And they're
they're superimposed
they're very
over
distracting
the
to me
Yeah.
on a lot of times. I've seen this movie enough times where I was able to ignore it. If I put subtitles on, I read the subtitles for something that I know full well what the scene is saying dialogue-wise. But it's just because it's so there, and maybe because it's a bright white light at the bottom of the screen, like moth to flame, that calls me to just not look up and look at the beautifulness that is Blade Runner and other movies. So, but I had no problem on this one, and I actually got a couple of new things out of it. The city noises I was hearing.
The city is
seeing
talking to us the entire time. I noticed that looking at this time around. So that really helped out.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking to do that.
I want to know what your experience was the first time you saw this movie. How old were you?
It wasn't my favorite film until kind of later on in my life. Originally, a theatrical cut did not leave an impression on me at all. Like, at all. It was a real twist my arm process to get me to come back and revisit it. And I used to have the Criterion Collection Blade Runner Laserdisc, which I still have it. Warner Brothers was, I think, the first company to go with the DVD format. And I want to say that one of their first 5, I think, included Road Warrior and Blade Runner. I wanted to get into that format very badly because it was twice as good as Laserdisc and way better than VHS. I was happy to be an early adopter of the first DVD player, which was Toshiba, and I purchased Blade Runner.
That's awesome.
And it was a big difference.
So when you had your Blade Runner Laserdisc, would you say that you were into the movie at that time?
Still no.
No?
No, it wasn't until later on.
It's funny that you bring that up because I've heard a lot of people say that they need to experience this movie several times before actually getting into it and really, really liking it. Why do you think that is?
I obviously consider this a piece of art. I consider this the greatest piece of art. You and I live very close to a museum that features some large art pieces that the more times you stare at it, the more things you see in those paintings. I get a different experience out of it every single time I watch it.
Let's talk a little bit about the cityscape. That's one of the shots that we see when the film opens.
One of the things that can be said about Blade Runner is that it's one of, if not the last great all in-camera practical effects movie. There's no CGI really in the movie.
Really?
It's all practical effects. Like just that opening sequence where you see 2019 Los Angeles come up. Those are all models. Models start off with one scale and then they get smaller. They make it look like you can see for hundreds of miles, and it's all practical. Some of the stuff that's really cool about the model shots is that it was all done with multiple pass film.
That opening shot, I think, had 17 passes. So they ran it, stopped, wound it back, ran it again, wound it back.
And many times, instead of doing it as an optical composite, we would do multiple exposures, which was risky because you'd shoot one pass, roll the film back, shoot another pass, roll the film back. And I remember a couple times they'd open up the camera and there'd be nothing but shredded film inside.
If you want to talk about just one location, like the Bradbury, which already has like beautiful architecture.
Super industrial, right?
It's gorgeous. The elevators still look like that. It's a real building. When you drive by the Bradbury first time and it's like attached to a Subway sandwich shop, they were only allowed to shoot, I think, from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. every night. Every single time the Bradbury building would close down at night, they would have to reset up and re-litter and garbage and relight and refog and everything.
I was going to ask you, how much of that is the real city versus set pieces?
Most of the city stuff was shot on the Warner Brothers backlot. And this is a complete side story, but I'll tell it now. When the Blu-ray came out years ago, they were doing a charity auction screening of Blade Runner where they were going to invite most of the cast and crew out there and they were going to show it on a Warner Brothers backlot. And this is one of the things I was talking about that kind of points me to my north, which is Blade Runner. I never win anything. I'm always last to finish. Like I never get anything in my life lucky like that. And so
is that the luck of the Irish?
Yeah, it was the luck of the Irish that day. I luckily got in and got 2 tickets. So I called up my friend and we're like, hey, I don't give a shit what you're doing this weekend, but we're leaving for LA Friday morning. And so we went to the screening and at this screening, they didn't allow you to bring anything in. This is the first time I'd ever been involved with a screening where they take your cell phone and your car keys through metal scanners. It was big time. It was Warner Brothers. You're going into where they've shot hundreds of my favorite movies.
And of course, you're geeking out.
Oh, dude.
Like completely, right?
Of course. I'm totally fucking nerding out that I had actually won this. I was excited to see who was going to show up. This is where some of the story gets a little dicey, but I had my printed up ticket that was exact 8x10. Underneath the 8x10 print up of the ticket, I had kind of snuck in this Blade Runner script that was the exact same size. It had a poster of Blade Runner on the outside cover of the script. And so I put that through the metal scanner and I got in and we go attend the screening. And it's amazing to watch Blade Runner screened on the actual Warner Brothers backlot. Then they bring out the cast and crew and all the producers and Sid Mead, who did the conceptual design for Blade Runner, and Ridley Scott's there, and Hampton Fancher and David Peoples and Catherine Haber and just all these fucking people. And I am freaking the fuck out because I'm like, I'm maybe 5-6 rows away from these people who created my favorite piece of art of all time. As soon as the Q&A is done, Ridley Scott was right at the edge of the stage and he was saying hi to somebody. I asked him to sign my script and he signed it. Everybody in the theater just immediately lined up behind me to get an autograph, and that's when security came by and grabbed him and took off. So I was the only one.
So you weren't allowed to bring that in?
No, of course not. No, fuck no. No, but it was the exact same size as the printed up ticket.
That's really funny.
So I went through the metal scanner.
So you managed to sneak it in?
Oh yeah, no. It's Blade Runner. I don't give a shit. All rules are off.
So you got Ridley Scott to sign a copy of the script.
Yeah,
you still have it?
Yeah, of course. Jesus, God, yeah. Well, here's the other thing. So Ridley gets escorted off by security. Everyone else, like all the producers and all the writers, just hang out in the lobby eating meat and cheeses. So like a complete idiot, I'm just walking around like, hey, sorry to bother you. And they're putting down their drinks and cheese plates and signing my poster. So I walked out with like everybody who had anything to do with Blade Runner's autograph that day.
You're interrupting their precious lunchtime.
Oh, yeah. And I apologize, but I can assure they made a lifetime fan,
That's awesome.
Super happy. And I will say, out of my entire life, I've never been starstruck, but I will definitely say at the time I got an autograph with Ridley Scott, that was the one and only time I've been starstruck. You make fun of me a lot for my men crushes. You always...
You love your chiseled men with light eyes, and
like
you have a type. You definitely have
like unique
a type
features.
of man.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
You always make fun of me.
Yeah, they gotta be, European.
I think Rutger Hauer is one of the most handsome men ever put on film.
I have to agree. And this viewing really convinced that for me. He is just drop dead gorgeous. He is deadly to look at.
I agree. I think I'm in the middle of 14 stories right now. When I went to Ireland a couple years ago, I got to take a tour of the Guinness factory. Their spokesperson was Rutger Hauer. And so that meant a lot to me that he used to shoot all these Guinness commercials. And I have to tell you, as an art student that you are, you need to look at these commercials because they are the most trippy, fucked up, David Lynchian commercials that have ever been put on television, and Rutger just looks like he's in his natural habitat because he's such a weirdo.
Where is he from?
He's Dutch. He got to start doing movies with Paul Verhoeven. Verhoeven did Basic Instinct and RoboCop, also kind of destroyed his career with Showgirls, but he was a very go for the jugular, literally sometimes, type of director. RoboCop is one of the most violent films ever. It's the only movie that ever made me throw up, ever.
as a kid.
Yeah.
Is that the story of
Where
you sneaking to watch RoboCop?
Yeah.
Can you just tell that really quick for a second?
I have no problem telling this story. I hope it'll not make everyone else throw up. But back in those days, if you worked for a company, you either on the weekends would go to like some kind of softball game where everyone who worked for the firm of Smith & Smith would all be on one team and play softball or whatever, or you would just go to like these like dinner picnic type things at a coworker's house. And so my mom brought me, and she was mingling with other coworkers, and I weaseled my way downstairs where they were getting ready to watch RoboCop. When I sat down, because I was born in Pennsylvania, I was eating a Philly cheesesteak, and it just had like all this like super loose meat. And there's a scene in the beginning of the movie where he gets his hand blown off.
See, I got this problem. Cops don't like me, so I don't like cops.
And it's super violent, and I did not know how fucked up this movie was going to get as a kid. And so when they shoot his hand off, it looked just like my Philly cheesesteak sandwich.
I hate when that happens.
It was just a bunch of raw loose meat for a nub of a hand. And so I just vomited all over my own lunch. And the parents went up and they're like, "Hey, does anyone got some kind of freckly faced little Irish kid down here who's throwing up?" My mom's looking left and looking right and can't find me, and she goes, "Well, that must be mine." So she walks downstairs and takes claim to the kid she brought to the work function that was throwing up because of RoboCop. So that's
why you don't eat steak anymore.
Well, that is probably the reason. Yeah, I don't think I've had a Philly cheesesteak since I was watching RoboCop. Yeah, it's the only movie to ever make me throw up for real. But what story was I telling before that?
Really interesting. We were talking about Guinness and Rutger Hauer
Yes,
and how
Rutger Hauer.
insanely
Gorgeous.
handsome
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah. I got a chance to meet him. Blade Runner's my favorite movie, and I have this huge tattoo of you. And he goes, "Well, let me see." And he's freaking out. So I rolled my sleeve up, and I mean, he saw it, and he was trying to get his face as close to my shoulder as he could to take a selfie
That's awesome.
with him and my tattoo. And we were laughing our asses off because he couldn't get the right angle. And so then all his entourage were taking pictures. And yeah, it was great. He ended up putting the picture of me and him up on his website.
No way.
Yeah, the homepage of his website for a couple months.
That's great.
That was like a huge honor. Me and him laughing and giggling like super hard.
This is a dark movie, but there is a lot of contrasting light.
Yeah.
There is a lot of strobe lighting. There's a lot of neon lighting.
If you watch the difference between the golden hues that Cronenweth uses for the upper class, Tyrell, and anyone in a position of power or money, it's got a much more golden, beautiful look that I think was very beautifully carried out by the sequel, 2049. I mean, obviously with Neander, his whole office building has the water ripples with golden effect, and they took it to the 10th degree. But you could see the hints of it. Just the fact that there's a scene in there where Tyrell, who is basically a god to the replicants, he can control the sun. Deckard says, "It's too bright in here. I can't do my void comm test." Tyrell is able to just close off the sun. You get how powerful Tyrell is just in the actions. Him being able to control the sun, that's a boss move right there.
Right.
The contrasting going into some of the more dilapidated scenes and stuff where Cronenweth changed it to more blues and cold and dark and contrasty, and a lot of moving lights where you felt like you're being monitored. You constantly felt like there was a spotlight moving and keeping an eye on you. And you get a lot of that in the accompanying audio sound effects, things surveying you overhead. I take something new every single time I watch this movie. I'm not sure why, but I really attached myself to the chess game. Roy Batty starts off acting stupid. Once you realize that this movie at this point becomes a chess game with a chess game inside of this chess game segment of the movie, when Roy talks Sebastian in the elevator through the process of how to beat his own maker, which there's a lot going on there with that statement, the chess piece of the elevator now is able to move up. Watching that whole sequence of the chess game and how there's a real, well, I'm going to play stupid, which is how you get your opponent to make mistakes. And then that's how he's able to disarm Sebastian, because he makes a move and Sebastian's like, no, that won't work. Well, that's Roy Batty playing stupid and opening up conversation and disarming Sebastian when Sebastian delivers Roy Batty to his father, to his maker. Scared shitless because he probably knows this is his last 5 to 15 minutes, and he's embarrassed that he has been outduped by by a replicant that he helped make. And it's the same thing for Tyrell. Tyrell is the god of replicants, and his prodigal son has returned and wants to meet his maker. Yeah, man, that whole fucking scene. You could ask me a million questions about this movie, and I'll answer all of them, but ultimately, the main theme for me that brings me back for this movie is I'm a sucker for these types of movies. I've shown you stuff like Ex Machina, and there's a couple other movies I could probably describe that take a lot of cues from Blade Runner, but ultimately, I think what Blade Runner says about humanity, if you believe in Bible and all this other stuff, which I personally don't, but it's definitely interesting to see the parallels of God created man in the likeness of himself, and so when man is able to create its own life form, do replicants have hearts and feelings and brains and memories and all this other stuff? You have to ask all these like larger questions, but they're made in the likeness of man, and it's just really interesting to just examine these types of movies that say, well, what is it to be a human? So halfway through the movie, Rachel starts suspecting she's a replicant, but is that based on the fact that someone told her that her world isn't real? If so, and no one had told her that, would she keep on believing that the memories she had were real? Does she know what love is? Is it a program? Or the fact that ignorance is bliss, if no one had told her, could she keep believing in the program of love and not knowing it's a program and it's just the word love? Like, there's so many fucking questions I could ask about every one of those scenes where you have humans interacting with things that they made that are better than them, but then you have to start asking, can they have feelings, and can Deckard fall in love with Rachel, and what is it like for Roy to meet his father?
I've done questionable things, also extraordinary things. Revel in your time.
Nothing the god of biomechanics wouldn't let you in heaven.
He kisses him at the end, but you can read that kiss as so many fucking different things. Is it the kiss of death? Is it symbolic? Is it Roy showing emotion? Is he really upset that he has to kill his dad? Is he doing it out of sympathy for Tyrell?
You brought up the Bible, and a scene, if I can go back to it, when Roy Batty stabs his hand with a nail.
Yeah.
What was the significance?
Okay. Well, so Roy is within moments of dying. He is starting to malfunction. So he has no control over a lot of the functions of his body.
Not very sporting to fire on an unarmed opponent. I thought you were supposed to be good. Aren't you the good man?
And he doesn't say man, he says opponent. That dialogue in that last 20 minutes is very tightly written. You were asking about the nail going through, obviously, the 9-inch nail going through Christ's hand. There's different ways you can read that scene. You could say he wants to know what it's like to feel pain because he's starting to malfunction. You can read it like that.
Can he feel pain?
You can ask that question too. You can say, hey, is he the Jesus Christ of the replicants? Is he sacrificing himself, which he did because he's the last of the escapee replicants? He could be the Christ-like figure of the replicants. You can also read it like he's putting himself on the same playing field as Deckard. Deckard has an injured right hand, so now he has an injured right hand. He wants everything to be even because he's basically just getting ready to play with Deckard like a little cat and mouse game. The happiest that Roy looks in the entire movie is that last shot when Deckard is down to holding himself up by only 2 fingers. And right when he is on the last bit of hope Deckard has before he's about to die, that's when they cut in a shot with the rain coming down of those eyes of Roy Batty, and you just, that's the happiest he looks because that's as close as Deckard's going to get to dying, and he wants him to live in fear.
Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it is to be a slave.
And right when Deckard falls, that's when he saves him with the hand that has the nail through it. What's so interesting is as close as Deckard is to death is the most close to life. Basically, in his 4-year lifespan, the biggest impact he really made on anyone else would be Deckard's life and showing that much fear to Deckard, which is also kinds of fucked up, and I love it. That's the most fucked up spiral I think I've ever described.
I love it too. There is so much interesting dialogue that he says throughout the movie.
You Nexus, huh? I design your eyes.
Sure. If only you could see what I've seen with your eyes.
And eyes are a huge thing. One of the first shots in the movie is explosions curling around the oval part of the eyeball. Yeah. Eyes are the windows of the soul. Chu designs eyes. The last speech that Roy gives, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. He gouges out Tyrell's eyes.
He does. Yeah,
it's a lot of eye-related stuff. But the way you tell a replicant is the reflection of red in their eyes.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die.
That final speech was all written by Rucker. In my opinion, it's probably the greatest speech in film history.
Yeah.
I know I'm biased.
Well, there's nothing cooler than that.
You can't express the loss of time and memory, wasted life, and what you've done with your life. And when you get to the end of it and looking back and reflections on it, you can't say it more beautifully than all the memories that I have won't mean a hill of beans to anyone else but me, because it's just like tears in the rain. It's just going to fucking wash away, and no one's going to give a shit. No one's going to notice your tears washing away in the big picture of things.
Well,
like no one else.
That's life.
It's never been more beautifully, in my opinion, said than in that speech. Roy's rise and fall is heart fucking breaking.
What about EMS recombination?
We've already tried it. Ethyl methane sulfonate is an alkylating agent and a potent mutagen. It created a virus so lethal the subject was dead before he left the table.
Then a repressive protein that blocks the operating cells.
Wouldn't obstruct replication, but it does give rise to an error in replication so that the newly formed DNA strand carries the mutation and you've got a virus again.
That scene where he gets into it with Tyrell, he goes over these things about morphology and he wants longer life. And Tyrell is cock blocking him on every one of his math equations that he wants to spill out to Tyrell. And again, it's a chess game. Well, why don't you do this? Well, no, we've tried that. And then it leads to the rise of insurrection and rats leaving the ship and blah, 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 blah. It's a great fucking back and forth ping pong chess game right there with two great minds going at it. And it's fucking amazing. Back in 82, no one had written dialogue like that sharp. You can watch that scene and be like, what the fuck are they talking about? It does not matter. You get the gist of it and you get the frustration that he's trying to survive. As much as I love the question of what does it say about humanity to build something in your likeness but build it better, but then also want to suppress it and want to only let it live for 4 years because of self-preservation, that you don't want it to outlive you or outdo you. What's the difference between humans and replicants? Really, if you think about it, when you come down to the core of it, even replicants are born with the native instinct to survive. And that's what I love about this movie is, was that created? Is that a function? Is that a program that someone designed? That has to be programmed into somebody.
Right.
Everything's born with the natural instinct to survive. I think a computer program would want to survive. And that's why Roy and his merry band of miscreants go on the adventures they go on. They want to outlive the 4 years because that's bullshit.
That's all they want.
And I love that the humans' natural instinct to survive is to suppress them, outliving them. And I think that's the ultimate conflict is you have two different species. And I think that says a lot about the human race, I think, is just what they're willing to do to suppress. In a way, would have loved to have seen a prequel of what Roy Batty would have got. The Adventures of Roy Batty. Sounds like a Western, but
I love it.
A sci-fi Western.
I love it.
But it needs a theme song.
Who's directing this? Who's writing it?
Well, I am in love with 2049, so I would love for Mr. Denis Villeneuve to come back and please do anything Blade Runner related, because whoever didn't fucking buy a ticket and cause that movie to tank at the box office also. 2049, yes. Both movies are art house films that are just super big budget and didn't do well in the box office, but now people have seen them and realize, oh, okay, shit, I should have seen this a while ago because they're both great.
So Blade Runner is your all-time favorite movie. Greatest of all time. It's the GOAT.
There's a lot of stuff outside that have made it the greatest experience for me. You know, I have this original print Blade Runner that poster. Sorry, I don't know why I don't complete my sentences.
I don't either.
So sorry. We're
a hot mess.
Do you remember that doctor from Arrested Development?
Yes.
He'd say, "Hey, the bad news is your dad is dead." Pause. Tired. What I meant to say is I have a Blade Runner poster that is original print. And so the way I found that, I used to manage a Blockbuster. And one of the appeals of managing a Blockbuster is you got as many free rentals as you want. I think you keep like 5 at a time or something like that. And so I'd rent them and then I'd bring them back the next day. I must have been going to work to drop off and exchange some movies, maybe 11:59. And Blockbuster famously always closed at midnight. I had my movies, I was walking back out, and I had noticed that as I was walking in, that there was this huge piece of white rectangle, something just laying in the parking lot, just laying there. And I was like, what the fuck is that? So I exchanged my movies. I came back out and it was still there. And the only other car in the parking lot was a truck. But then the truck took off and I was like, well, I thought that was this truck's thing that maybe flew out or came out. So I go and I lift it up and it's an original print Blade Runner poster just laying down on the ground.
So you're thinking this is like just like a piece of trash, right?
No,
or something
I'm thinking
that fell off this
God
truck.
placed it there for me. And I don't believe in God, but I feel like the gods of movies just opened up the clouds and just dropped something like the Coke bottle from The Gods Must Be Crazy.
Did you guys have this?
None of these answers have been ever answered. Aliens or replicants or somebody put that poster in the Blockbuster parking lot at 11:59 for me to pick up. The problem is that it was hardbacked. So I couldn't. Here's the thing. This is a weird story. So I put it in my car, but back in my day, the seatbelts used to kind of like start down by the side mirror, but then move up to the edge of the car door.
Were they automatic? They were.
Yeah,
right?
and so it would just automatically open
weird.
like that.
That's
it was stupid.
Yeah,
they've since
That's
obviously
some
stopped
kind of
that.
weird function and design.
It was done. But the thing is I got the poster in and the car door wouldn't shut. So now
because it's too big for your car.
It's too big for the car, and now the seatbelt won't go down. So now I'm driving home with this huge poster in my back seat, blocking my rearview mirror. I'm driving with my right hand holding the car door with my left because it's still a foot open, and my dome light is on, and my seatbelt's not attached because the seatbelt's attached to the car door. Since I haven't shut the door, it's still by the side view mirror. There's all kinds of things wrong with what I'm doing.
So you find a piece of trash, like this really
it's not
large.
Trash, it's gold.
You think it's you don't know what it is. Okay,
Yeah.
so you try to fit
It's
in your
calling
car
me.
and it doesn't freaking fit.
Again, I'm driving with the door open, dome light on, rear view mirror blocked, seatbelt not on, all kinds of fucked
You get
up
in
shit.
your car. So how
I'm
far away
driving.
from you from home?
Maybe 5 minutes.
Okay, not
but
that
the
far.
problem is in between and in the 5-minute interim is a police station. And so when I pull up to turn left from the Blockbuster, I'm stuck at a stoplight. There's a cop who pulls up right next to me, and he's looking at me with my dome light on, no seatbelt, and the car door open, and all this shit. And he's just staring at me, and I'm like, I'm fucked. I couldn't believe it. But his light turned green, and he just accelerated and went on his way. And I was like, that's the gods telling me I'm supposed to have this poster. So then I just took off left and I got home and I've had that poster ever since. There's a limited edition vinyl soundtrack. The vinyl is actually red. It goes for like $600 on Amazon and you can't find it anywhere. And I went to this like piece of shit music store that only had one little cart of soundtracks, and they were shitty. They were like super old banjo type movies from the 50s and stuff, all the way back in the back. The last fucking one was a shiny brand new Blade Runner. I was like, well, I don't have the soundtrack. I might as well pick it up. So as soon as I get in the car, I open it up, and the fucking record that comes out is the goddamn limited edition red one.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, how does this keep happening to me? A couple years ago, Warner Brothers did a 75th anniversary tour. They would take all these film prints and just go from major city to major city to major city, and they would rent out a movie theater for an entire week, and each day was dedicated to a decade, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And so you would pay I think like $30, just stay all day and just watch a whole decade's worth of movies. So I saw like all these Kubrick movies. I saw Full Metal Jacket. I saw The Shining, Tim Burton's Batman. I saw Bonnie and Clyde. I saw Bullet. I saw like all these fucking movies. I want to say the movie that screened right before Blade Runner was a Kubrick movie, and he shoots in 1:3:3. So the curtains were like super closed in, because he shoots at like basically a square format. Blade Runner is shot anamorphically 2:3:9. I knew Blade Runner was next because I knew what the layout of the movies was, and all of a sudden these curtains just completely spread, and they keep going, and they keep spreading, they keep going wider and wider and wider, and it was a film print of Blade Runner, and I saw things I've never seen before. There's a scene at the end where Roy Batty's hanging out, and he just got hit by the lead pipe by Deckard, and he's leaning out, and he's letting these drops hitting him in the head, and I've never saw it before. Being up on this huge screen and being a beautiful film print, he has all these tattoos, which I imagine imagine are probably from all these adventures that he keeps talking about in his amazing speeches. But I was like, I've never seen these fucking tattoos before.
And I noticed them tonight.
Never saw that before. It's another storytelling vehicle, and you don't notice it unless you have a good print, like the 4K version we just watched,
God, it was
or the
beautiful.
film frame. I would say the screening is my greatest movie experience of all time. I would say my second favorite is that Warner Brothers 75th tour, because I saw so many amazing movies and so many film prints. I saw Goodfellas. I mean, I just sat there for days just watching nonstop great, amazing Warner Brothers movies, and Blade Runner was one of them. It's my second favorite movie going experience of all time.
Well, thanks for having me on your podcast. It's been great.
This is a real turn of events. I appreciate you doing it. Again, I feel kind of naked. I didn't bring anything. I don't even have sleeves right now.
I see a tattoo sleeve.
Yeah, exactly. That's about it. But I brought nothing except for a cup of water.
I had a great time.
Yeah, me too. I love being on the receiving end of, especially for this movie. You know, this is great. And thank you so much for asking all these like great questions and giving me a chance to wax philosophical about my favorite movie. But ultimately, even if I got every single thing wrong, or if you didn't agree with a single thing I said, you should at least leave this podcast knowing that I'm in love with this film. I will get a different experience the next time I watch it, and I hope the same for anyone else listening, and I hope the same for you also, Gigi. But yeah, thanks. And while I actually have you on the microphone, before we take off, I wanted to say in person, since I do this normally in my closings, I wanted to say that thank you so much for all your hard work on this podcast. I wouldn't be able to do any of it without you, so thanks so much for doing that. I appreciate it.
I love being a part of it. Thanks for having me. And it was an honor to do this takeover.
Well, I appreciate it. Maybe I'll let you do it more often.
I would love to.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it again.
Today, I'm very honored to have a conversation with the amazing Sean Young. Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, and thanks for asking me to talk.
When we first meet Rachel, she's the embodiment of beauty and certainty. As the movie progresses, she slowly starts to question her entire existence, including the realization that she's only a few years old. How were you able to find the delicate balance of a child that's been lied to her entire life versus an adult's confidence built on fabrication of someone else's memories?
Well, obviously, Ridley Scott was a big part of that. What we discovered was that I was much younger than the character, so he kept trying to sort of season me up, you know, like try to make me older, and so that was part of it. He was always feeding me cigarettes because I had to smoke, but that innocence kind of had to be there. So I think that was part of why I might have gotten the part in the first place. I look at movie making as something that you discover along the way. I wouldn't say that's true of someone like Ridley Scott. He's got all the planning to do, you know. You try to find the best suit to the best match to what you're trying to achieve.
When we first meet Roy Batty or Pris, they already know they're 4 years old and that they're going to be dying soon. There is obviously a huge tragedy to that storyline, but then to see how your character catches up to where they're at already, even just the first shot we see of you, you're walking gracefully, you're lit beautifully, to go from this amount of confidence to slowly realize nothing I know is real. I see all of that in the smallest things that you do.
But I obviously had a lot of help. You know, I didn't really know a lot, although I pay attention and I am alert. I try to be conscious of what's going on around me, but the environment of being on a set, especially a set like Blade Runner, I mean, what a different set. Being on the studio, which was at the time the Burbank Studios, which is now back to being Warner Brothers, which I think it was before it was the Burbank Studios. I studied a lot of the people that had made all their movies there when I was making Blade Runner there, like Bette Davis and Joan Crawford and James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart. And, you know, there were a lot of people. And also MGM. I worked there over there too. But this was a very unique experience, not really seen before special effects and sci-fi intent and content. You know, this was sort of new for what it was at that time. No one had really done it before.
In this day and age, all the world building is done with a lot of green screens and CGI. Blade Runner was one of the last great in-camera practical effects movies. And what was it like to walk out on like those huge, gigantic, and functioning set pieces?
Well, most of my work was in two different places, Harrison's apartment and then the big, you know, Terrell Corporation.
Right.
I had a couple other scenes, the telephone when he calls me down from the bar.
Right.
You know, there's that one little set. And out on the street when I shoot Leon, I remember being there when Joanna was supposed to go through her double was supposed to go through all the
glass,
all the glass, and because that was sort of around the same time I was doing that. We were all sort of there at the same time, and that backlot, that was just classic. I felt like I was in the real, golden era of Hollywood. The CGI has got a distance from it, doesn't it?
It's a tool that can be used, but I mean, there's nothing that beats practical. Some of those aerial shots where they're going through the city and stuff, it looks so perfect, and you can tell that that's something tangible instead of like created with a bunch of dots and ones and zeros. It makes a huge difference.
It does. I remember when I watched War of the Worlds. I didn't mind the first half of it, but that crawling snake thing throughout the whole movie after a while got on my nerves.
Now, which one are you talking about? The original or the remake?
No, the one with Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah, the Spielberg movie. Yeah.
I just thought, oh God, enough already.
Sometimes CGI doesn't really last the test of time.
That's true. Some movies age well, some don't.
Yeah.
You don't know why. I don't know why that is.
I'm absolutely fascinated by the amount of detail poured into the film. Specifically like your medium and close-up shot. Everything from your hair and makeup to the smoke that was refracting the light or obscuring your face to the gleam in your lips and your eyes. I was wondering if you could discuss what it was like to be on set and have so much attention placed on your appearance.
Do you remember the shot in the bathroom when I walk up and say, if I went up north, would you hunt me?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, no, I wouldn't. He says, but somebody would. And in that shot, there's this weird round thing going on in my iris. That was probably the most challenging because I had to be in a certain place.
They were doing something to make, obviously, the replicant red eyes, but they weren't doing, again, with CGI, so that you had to hit like a specific point.
That one took a lot because I had to move. If you watch it closely, I do this sort of shift over, move, and then Harrison comes in and says, but someone would. That was the only lighting that was actually really specific. Well, there was one other time, but really specifically had to be in the right place. And
gotcha.
Having been a dancer, that wasn't that difficult for me. That's easy stuff for me, really. The other time was during the interview in the beginning of the movie.
Like the void contest?
When I light my cigarette and it takes me a little while to light it. I mean, it takes me twice. I wasn't allowed to move because my hairdo was hiding a light behind me. So just sort of did that weird, awkward flick of the lighter because I had to stay completely still. And it's easy for me to see that in other people's performances now, to see like their awkwardness or what happened and how they just kept going on, and going forward.
Seeing that you didn't move as much, I thought just the kind of statuesque type of character, because we had only really seen you on screen for less than 10 minutes. You were just so prim and proper at that point. Going back to the first question, that's what made the breakdown of everything that your character was so much more impressive and why I loved your performance so much. Now that I know that you were just trying to make sure your backlight wasn't getting messed up.
Hit your mark,
yeah, that's
as
so
they say.
One of the lasting influences of your character is the costumes that she wears.
You'll love this. I was just talking to Charles Node, the guy who designed the costumes.
Okay.
And he lives on the south of England. He lives down by the sea. I think it's the Isle of Wight or something like that. But I hadn't talked to him in like 30 or 40 years. And it was crazy. He was going, oh, you sound just the same. And he sounded very similar, too. And I said, I don't mind. If you got old, we all get old, because he's pretty old now. So that was really fun to sort of catch up with him. I think Charles had a great deal to do with me really ending up on that show. He designed all the costumes. Ridley trusted him, and he's English. He basically was the designer of the way we all looked, and he did a great job. And he's done tons and tons of movies. I think he just believed in the brunette approach, and that's sort of what it boils down to. There was a blonde choice and a brunette choice, and I think Charles said, "Oh, do the brunette choice," and that was pivotal.
Once you got into those costumes, much like the set pieces, once you were in that, were you like, okay, now I'm Rachel?
They were very amazing costumes to wear, and recently the guy who bought the coat, the original Rachel coat, gave it to me.
What?
Sent it to me. He did. He bought that that thing for $20,000, like, 40 years ago or whatever it was. And he's had it in his closet. And I met him maybe 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried on the coat again. And I remember thinking, good Lord, there's a lot of work that went into this coat. Like, I'm like amazed, right? He felt like he'd had it long enough and he wanted to give it to me. And I said, oh, I would love it. So he sent that first coat that I wear when I go to Harrison.
That is unbelievable.
Deckard's apartment. He sent it to me. And then he also sent me the mannequin that he kept it on. So I was very happy about it. It's older now. It's like 20, however long that is, 80, 90,
What a
obviously
reunion.
40
That's
years.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm totally
Can't
nerding
even
out
believe
right
it's
now.
that long.
I love knowing that you have that jacket now. That makes me
I
feel
know.
so much better.
I was so happy that he sent it to me because, he just had it long enough. It was just sitting in his closet and he thought, I want to get this coat to the person it belongs to. So he gave it to me.
When you saw the movie for the first time, were you blown away by how perfectly the Vangelis score mirrored the portrayal of the character you were doing?
I was blown away by the whole movie just because of everything. They couldn't get Vangelis excited about releasing it as a, as like at that time, I guess, an album or a CD or what. I think it was still records then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't get Vangelis excited about releasing it for whatever reason. Who knows? I don't know. Eventually it caught on, but that was sort of true of the movie as well. When it first came out, people were kind of like awestruck, dumb. And then it took, I would say, a while, a few years for people to kind of comprehend that could be considered one of the greatest movies ever made, I mean, I've watched Citizen Kane again, and I love that movie too, and Casablanca, another great movie, But this is up there in the some of the greatest movies of all time. Singing in the Rain. I love Wuthering Heights. I love Wizard of Oz. But most of the movies I love are older movies. I love some modern movies. I do, but I can never remember them the way I remember the old movies. Did you ever see a movie a few years ago called Thelma?
Just Thelma? No, I don't know
Thelma.
if I did.
It's a Swedish or Norwegian film.
Okay.
And it's Thelma, and it stars this girl. It's crazy. you have to see it.
Okay.
That's a movie I never thought. I mean, it was sent to me because of being in the academy, and now they get we get all these screeners and everything. Although COVID's changed all that, but I had to watch that movie a few times. Another movie I just loved was Listen to Me, Marlon, the one about the biography about Marlon Brando.
Okay.
I watched that thing 10 times. 10 times. I never watch any movie 10 times, but I just wanted to hear what he had to say again, and it was just so different. I loved it. And
that's awesome. I'm definitely putting those on the list.
Those two, put those on the list.
I will.
For sure.
Sean Young recommendations. They're definitely probably getting watched this weekend, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, we're watching Chinatown today because I know my oldest son Rio hasn't seen it, and I was like, wait, you haven't seen that? No, you really need to see that.
James Hong from Bladerunner, actually.
That's right. I was saying that because now we do 6 degrees of separation now.
Well, James Hong's like in his 90s or something. He's probably he should be the new Kevin Bacon. That's who everyone should be like trying to do 6 degrees of. He's been in everything.
I want to send you a picture of Rutger and me.
I won't be able to send you a $20,000 coat or anything in return, but
no,
we'll do some kind of exchanges.
You'll like this picture of Rutger and me. It was one of the last. I think it was the last. I was sitting next to him when I put my arm around him, and my son came and took a picture. And it was just an adorable picture. So you really have to see it.
That's awesome. Actually, you're kind of known for taking like behind the scenes photographs.
I'm there in the beginning doing selfies.
I loved it though. We take for granted that everything now has to be documented. Movies are sold basically on what special features they have. You think about it, you were one of the first to do kind of behind the scenes photographs that were candid like that. It's been nearly 40 years now. Does it ever amaze you to see that to this day how many productions such as movies and TV shows and video games and commercials and comic books still use your movie as inspiration?
It doesn't surprise me, but I have no idea why. I think Ridley Scott was such a very talented graphic artist, and I think that I was able to basically do what he asked me to do. I was, very cooperative and very, very wanting to please. I think he did everything in his power to make me come off as great as I could, which I think he did.
Agreed.
It was a once in a lifetime experience. So
yeah.
I'm very glad I got to do it.
Just a lot of movies and TV shows these days are still borrowing from what Blade Runner did almost 40 years ago.
Well, but think about it. I mean, didn't Blade Runner borrow from previous ideas like, film noir and all of the beautiful lighting? I mean, I think it took it further, but some of that lighting was, look back at the really early lighting before there was sound to slow it down.
Yeah.
Some of that early lighting, like Metropolis, or there's some amazing examples of pre-sound photography that I'm sure Ridley knew about. He's a thorough fellow.
Yeah. I know he came from commercials before Blade Runner, and it between him and Jordan Cronenweth.
Oh, I love Jordan.
It's one of the most beautiful movies to look at, honestly.
He had this great appreciation of my face. He treated it like I was, I don't know, some kind of special caviar or something. He treated me with great gentleness. And here's the big comparison between, I guess, nowadays and back in the studio system. You'd be a part of a studio. They would watch the movie. They would assemble the movie. They'd put more of the movie together. And if they needed another shot, they just brought you in and did it, back in the studio days, which is one of the things that contributes to the older movies being much better made. Now, movies have to fit all their scenes into this budget of days that they won't necessarily get all of their footage that they had hoped for, so they have to edit around or whatever. You don't always get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Woody Allen would always plan 2 weeks of reshoots because he'd finish his movie, edit it, see what he needed, see what he missed, and go back and get it.
Do you still watch Blade Runner?
I have. I haven't in a couple of years, but I did a few years ago, and I turned it on for a second. I'm in this apartment. I'm moving basically to my forever home.
Okay.
And I knew I wasn't going to be here that long. So we have this HBO Max, and they put Blade Runner on there, and I turned it on and everything, and you can drag it now to where you want it to be.
Yeah.
And I dragged it, and I think my favorite scene in the movie is when I say, I'm not in the business, I am the business. And what a night that was. And I remember the guy opposite me who was holding this microphone and also this reflector. I don't know, there was a lot of stuff in that kitchen. And afterwards he said, that was the most amazing performance I've ever seen. And I looked at him like he was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? I mean, there's no way I could, what? So it was very strange, but he apparently had been very affected by it.
Right.
And I went home and went, you know what, the guy at work said?
Did you keep any other souvenirs from the production?
It's an awful story.
That you're allowed to talk about, I guess? I don't know.
I'm allowed to talk about it. It's just such an awful story. I was given the gray coat that I'm wearing when I shoot Leon. So I took that with me, I don't know where, back to New York. At that point, I was still living in this little 1-room, 1-bathroom Salvation Army girls residence. And I had an agent that went from one job to the next. He went from ICM to working for this guy named Jack Gilardi. And I've never researched this. Jack Gilardi had a production company on 6th Avenue, and I didn't have enough room in my closet, and I took the coat and said, can I just put it in this wardrobe place? Because I had all this different wardrobe there, and I thought it would be safe there. And then the company moved or shut down, or I don't know what happened. And so the coat is floating around somewhere, which nobody knows where.
No.
I know. And I always feel like such a schmuck. You need to find that coat, but I don't know where it is now. I know. Isn't that awful? It's awful.
Well, I got to be honest with you.
You should have kept it.
Yeah, but I'll be honest with you. Had you not let off our conversation today with probably one of the greatest reunited stories that I've heard in a long time.
Well, I love that coat. Yeah, that is a great coat for me to have. So I feel good about that. But I was just parking the coat, and I thought the guy was going to be working there, and then he got fired, and then I don't know what happened.
Jeez.
I got another movie or something. Life moves so quickly when you're on your ascendancy. So
Gotcha. Well, if it pops up on eBay in the next couple of years, you'll know
I
what
know,
happened
right?
to
I
it.
haven't even checked. There you go. I haven't even checked. I didn't know in 1980 or 81 when that was, because the movie really came out in 82.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know the movie would be what the movie became.
Right. You've been answering questions from fanboys and fangirls like me for decades. Is there one question you were never asked for the past 40 years that you always wanted to answer?
I like that question. I'm always curious about perception, because people have a particular perception of you based on the movie they saw. They could have seen Ace Ventura, different movie, right? But same actress, different movie. I'm always curious what people actually really think what I'm like, because of course it's never what it is in the movie. I'm not like any movie I've ever made.
Right.
Not really. I'm always curious that no one ever asks what are you actually really like.
Very excited to have had this conversation with you.
Thank you, Dick. I'm going to visit, and I hope we can meet then.
Okay, I will totally take you up on the offer. That would be a dream come true. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for being part of Blade Runner, and thank you for
Maybe
talking to me.
We could do part 2 in 6 months.
Hey, anytime you want to chat movies, if you just want to sit here and just discuss movies we've watched lately, I'm totally fine with that. I'll take more Sean Young recommendations any day of the week.
I like that idea.
Please, I would be absolutely honored. So I can't thank you enough. Okay,
right.
Thanks, you, Sean.
Steve. Ciao.
I'd like to thank everyone involved with this special edition of Sidetrack'd. William Sanderson has always been someone who can make me laugh, and interviewing him proved to be no different. Definitely go check out his book, Yes, I'm That Guy, The Rough and Tumble Life of a Character Actor. And Sean Young could not have been more sweet and inviting to chat with. In the spirit of closure, I did take her advice and I watched the movie Thelma and friggin' loved it. So hopefully we'll see more recommendations from her in the future on this podcast. As stated previously, big thanks to producer Gigi Lage, without whom this podcast would never exist. And finally, we're very excited to announce we've joined forces with Forwardly Network. So check them out at forwardly.com for a complete list of their amazing podcasts to listen to. If you like what you heard on today's episode, go ahead and subscribe so you can hear each episode as they come out, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Until next time, stay sick.